Happiness has become a moral obligation. At some point in recent decades, Western society decided that being sad, anxious, or simply dissatisfied is not just unfortunate, but unacceptable. A personal failure that must be corrected through positive affirmations, forced gratitude, and the perpetual smile of someone who has drunk too much of the sweet poison of positive thinking. This tyranny of mandatory joy is not accidental. It is the product of a billion-dollar industry that has discovered that selling hope is more profitable than selling truth, that keeping people chasing unattainable happiness makes them perpetual consumers of books, seminars, apps, and products that promise to transform their lives if only they change their mindset. Schopenhauer saw it coming nearly 2 centuries ago when he warned that life is essentially suffering and that those who promise otherwise are charlatans or deluded. But his gloomy message doesn't sell online courses, doesn't fill stadiums with motivational speeches, doesn't generate viral content on social media. And so, the uncomfortable truth is buried under layers of toxic positivity that insist that every problem is simply a disguised opportunity, that every failure is a lesson, that objective reality is less important than your subjective attitude towards it. The modern cult of optimism operates with the logic of a secular religion. It has its prophets in the form of self-help gurus who preach from stages illuminated with the certainty of someone who has seen the light. It has its sacred texts in the form of bestsellers with titles that promise ancient secrets for infinite abundance. It has its rituals in the form of morning affirmations, vision boards, and gratitude practices that must be performed with religious devotion. And like any religion, it has its heresy. Negative thinking, realism, skepticism, any form of critical analysis that suggests that perhaps things do not always work simply because you believe hard enough. Heretics are punished not with fire, but with social exclusion, with accusations of being toxic, attracting negative energy, being responsible for their own misery by refusing to see the glass as half full. This ideology of mandatory optimism serves specific social functions that are rarely examined. It keeps people focused on personal transformation rather than structural change. If all your problems are the result of your negative mindset, then the solution does not require questioning economic systems that concentrate obscene wealth in the hands of a few while millions struggle to survive. It does not require examining political structures that perpetuate inequality. It does not require confronting environmental realities that threaten the habitability of the planet. It only requires you to change your way of thinking, to visualize better, to be more grateful, to smile through the pain. It is the perfect opium for the masses of the 21st century, one that people administer voluntarily while paying for the privilege. Positive psychology, the academic field that emerged with the noble intention of studying human well-being instead of just pathology, has been hijacked and distorted into a pseudo-scientific justification for this tyranny of happiness. Legitimate research on resilience and gratitude has been simplified to caricature, transformed into absolute claims that ignore contexts, nuances, and limitations. Studies showing that gratitude can moderately improve well-being in certain populations under certain conditions become universal mandates that everyone must keep gratitude journals regardless of how legitimate their complaints are. Real science, with all its complexity and contradictory findings, is replaced by a digestible version that confirms what the self-help industry was already selling. The blindness caused by extreme optimism is not metaphorical. It is a literal inability to see information that contradicts the positive narrative. When you are committed to the belief that everything happens for a reason, that the universe conspires in your favor, that you only attract what you emit, then any contradictory evidence must be ignored or reinterpreted. The dismissed employee was not a victim of ruthless corporate restructuring. Simply, the universe is redirecting him toward his true purpose. The sick person is not suffering from random biological pathology. They just haven't thought positively enough to heal their body. The abuse victim did not experience unjustified violence. Somehow, they attracted that experience with their energy. This mental exercise to preserve an optimistic worldview requires extraordinary levels of denial that eventually collapse under the weight of reality, but only after causing significant psychological harm. Schopenhauer argued that the will, that blind force that drives all existence, is fundamentally irrational, and that suffering is inevitable in a universe without a benevolent purpose. The modern optimist rejects this view as depressing, but their rejection does not make it any less true. Overwhelming evidence from human history, nature, and simple observation of daily life suggests that suffering is ubiquitous, and that much of it serves no redemptive purpose. Children die from cruel diseases without learning valuable lessons. The innocent are destroyed by arbitrary violence without the universe offering compensation. Honest and dedicated efforts fail while deceptions thrive. Recognizing these realities is not pessimism. It is simply refusing to lie about the nature of existence. Toxic positivity has a particular psychological cost on those who are already suffering. When someone experiencing depression is bombarded with messages that they only need to think differently, that happiness is a choice, that they should be grateful for their blessings, the effect is not motivational. It is deeply alienating. The implicit message is that their suffering is their fault, that if they only had more mental discipline, they could simply decide to be well. This adds a layer of guilt and shame to the pre-existing suffering. The depressed person is now not only depressed, but also ashamed of being depressed, feeling that they have failed at the basic task of maintaining a positive attitude. This dynamic does not promote healing. It promotes isolation, because the person quickly learns that expressing their genuine pain will be met with empty platitudes about the power of positive thinking. The industry built around mandatory optimism is vast and extraordinarily lucrative. Self-help books generate billions in annual sales, each promising the ultimate formula for happiness that somehow the thousands of previous books with identical promises failed to deliver. Motivational seminars charge thousands of dollars for the privilege of being yelled at by a millionaire who insists that you can also become a millionaire if you simply desire it strongly enough, conveniently omitting the structural advantages, connections, and in many cases, plain luck that contributed to their own success. Life coaches, a profession that requires minimal certification and offers results impossible to measure, proliferate like mushrooms after the rain, each selling their slightly modified version of the same basic message. You are the problem. You are also the solution, and for a modest monthly fee, I can guide you to your best version. This commercialization of optimism reveals its true nature. It is not a philosophical discovery about the nature of reality. It is a product designed to generate recurring income. And like any successful product, it creates the need it claims to satisfy. Before you were told that you should be grateful every moment, that you should visualize your perfect future, that you should maintain constant positive vibrations, you probably didn't feel that there was anything fundamentally wrong with experiencing the normal range of human emotions that include sadness, frustration, anxiety, and dissatisfaction. But the positivity industry has convinced you that these states are problems that require correction, and conveniently offers the tools for that correction in exchange for your money and your time. Extreme optimism also corrupts the ability to effectively plan for the future. Sensible planning requires considering possible obstacles, identifying potential risks, developing contingencies for when things do not go as expected. But in the worldview of positive thinking, focusing on possible problems is manifesting those problems. It is attracting negativity with doubtful energy. So people are encouraged to visualize only the best possible scenarios and trust that the universe will take care of the details. This is a recipe for disaster. Entrepreneurs who refuse to do realistic market analysis because that would be negative thinking end up losing their life savings. People who refuse to consider that their relationships might fail end up devastated and unprepared when inevitably some relationships end. The denial of potential risks does not eliminate them. It simply guarantees that you will be hit unprepared. There is a crucial difference between genuine hope and toxic optimism. Hope acknowledges the difficulty of reality, but maintains the possibility that effort can lead to improvement. It is realistic about obstacles, but does not give up in the face of them. Toxic optimism, by contrast, denies the existence or magnitude of obstacles, insists that everything is fundamentally fine, or that any problem can be solved with the right mindset. Hope inspires genuine action because it recognizes that there are real problems that require real solutions. Toxic optimism paralyzes action because if everything is already perfect or will fix itself if visualized correctly, then there is no need for difficult and sustained effort. Corporate culture has enthusiastically adopted the ideology of mandatory positivity, because it perfectly serves their interests. Employees who believe that their problems at work are the result of their own negative attitudes do not organize unions, do not demand better conditions, and do not question managerial decisions that prioritize profits over well-being. Instead, they attend company-sponsored mindfulness seminars where they learn to accept exploitative working conditions with Zen equanimity. Corporate positivity is a brilliant control mechanism that turns legitimate complaints about unfair labor structures into individual stress management issues. The problem is not that you are paid inadequately while working excessive hours. The problem is that you are not sufficiently grateful for the opportunity to be exploited. Social media has amplified the tyranny of optimism to previously impossible levels. Everyone is compelled to curate meticulously edited versions of their lives that project constant happiness, unwavering success, and perpetual gratitude. Real life, with all its complexity, failures, moments of doubt and despair, is carefully edited out of public existence. The result is that everyone is comparing their messy internal realities with the polished facades of others, feeling inadequate because their life does not resemble the carefully constructed lies they see on their screens. And the solution offered to this suffering is not to recognize the fundamental falsehood of social media representations, but to work harder on your own personal brand of performative happiness, perpetuating the cycle. Schopenhauer had a particular view on pleasure, arguing that it is simply the temporary absence of pain rather than a positive state in itself. This perspective, although bleak, contains a truth that the modern optimist refuses to consider. Much of what we call happiness is actually a momentary relief from constant suffering. The satisfaction of eating only exists because you first experienced hunger. The pleasure of rest only makes sense in the context of prior fatigue. The joy of achievement is proportional to the anxiety that preceded the uncertain outcome. Recognizing this does not diminish the value of these positive moments, but rather contextualizes them within a more complete reality that includes suffering as the baseline state from which we temporarily emerge. Extreme optimism also harms interpersonal relationships in subtle but meaningful ways. When only positive emotions are allowed to be expressed, when every conversation must end with an uplifting message, when genuine pain is met with hurried attempts to reframe it as an opportunity for growth, true intimacy becomes impossible. Authentic connection between human beings requires the ability to be present with the full spectrum of experience, including dark moments. It requires witnesses who can sit with your pain without immediately trying to fix it or reframe it. Superficial friendships based on performative positivity may multiply, but deep relationships that sustain people in truly difficult times become rare because no one has learned to tolerate the discomfort of authentic suffering. The denial of death is perhaps the most extreme manifestation of toxic optimism. In a culture obsessed with positive thinking, death is the ultimate problem that cannot be solved with a better attitude. And so, instead of integrating mortality as a fundamental part of human existence, something that philosophers from the Stoics to existentialists have argued is essential to live authentically, modern culture simply pretends it does not exist. The dying are hidden in institutions. Grief is pathologized if it lasts more than a few weeks. Talking about death is considered morbid rather than realistic. This denial does not make death any less inevitable. It simply ensures that when it arrives, as it inevitably does, people are completely unprepared psychologically or philosophically to face it. There is an element of privileged supremacy in much of positive thinking discourse. It is much easier to maintain a grateful attitude when your basic needs are secured, when you are not worried about where your next meal will come from, or if you will have shelter tonight. Optimism gurus typically preach from positions of considerable material privilege, and their most receptive audiences tend to be those with enough stability to afford the luxury of worrying about self-actualization rather than mere survival. Telling someone in extreme poverty that they only need to visualize abundance is not spiritual wisdom. It is cruelty that blames victims of structural injustice for their own oppression. The final paradox of mandatory optimism is that it does not actually produce sustained happiness. Longitudinal studies show that pursuing happiness directly as a goal tends to make people less happy, not more. Genuine happiness tends to be a byproduct of living with purpose, of genuinely connecting with others, of engaging in meaningful work, not of repeating affirmations in front of the mirror every morning. But this truth cannot be packaged and sold as easily as the promise that a change in mindset will solve all your problems. Living with purpose requires confronting difficult truths about oneself and about the world. It requires sacrifice, commitment, tolerance for failure. These are not commodities that can be consumed, and therefore are not promoted by an industry based on selling quick fixes. The rejection of critical thinking is perhaps the most insidious harm caused by the culture of extreme optimism. Questioning dominant narratives, identifying inconsistencies, pointing out when the emperor is not wearing clothes. All these are essential functions of a healthy mind operating in a complex society. But within the framework of positive thinking, these activities are categorized as negativity, resistance to flow, low energy that must be avoided. The result is a population trained to accept narratives without critical examination, confusing healthy skepticism with destructive cynicism, and having lost the ability to distinguish between genuine pessimism and necessary realism. Schopenhauer believed that art and philosophical contemplation offered a temporary escape from the blind will that drives us toward perpetual suffering. But this escape, he argued, requires confronting the nature of suffering directly, not denying it. Greek tragedy, dark art, pessimistic philosophy, all these traditions understand that there is value and even catharsis in recognizing and exploring the dark aspects of existence. Toxic optimism eliminates these escape valves by insisting that only uplifting, inspiring, and positive content has value. This emotional censorship does not eliminate dark feelings. It simply forces them into the subconscious, where they ferment without the opportunity for conscious processing. The infantilization of suffering is another symptom of this culture. Adults are encouraged to use language typically reserved for young children when talking about difficulties. Problems become fun challenges. Failures are opportunities to learn. Pain is disguised growth. This language is not accidental. It infantilizes people, placing them in a psychological stance of dependence where they need gurus and coaches to navigate realities that functional adults should be able to face with straightforward honesty. An adult can acknowledge that sometimes things are simply terrible without needing to find the hidden positive side. A child needs every negative experience to be reframed to protect their fragile psyche. The culture of toxic optimism treats everyone as children who cannot handle the truth. Genuine spirituality has also been corrupted by this trend. Ancient traditions that offered complex paths to understanding, that recognized the need to confront the shadow, that did not promise happiness but perhaps wisdom or liberation from the cycle of desire, have been reduced to simplified versions that promise abundance and manifestation of desires. Buddhism, a philosophy that begins with the noble truth that life is suffering, is repackaged as a mindfulness technique to increase work productivity. Meditative practices designed to confront the illusion of the ego are sold as tools to build a stronger and more successful ego. This is not spiritual evolution. It is commercial colonization of sacred traditions. The question of what pessimism is for, the grim realism that Schopenhauer represented, is rarely genuinely asked. But the answer is clear. It serves as a necessary counterbalance to the human tendency towards illusion. It serves as a reminder that not all stories have happy endings, and that pretending otherwise does not change that reality. It serves as a foundation for building realistic expectations that will not destroy you when life inevitably fails to meet overly optimistic visions. It serves as a vaccine against the exploitation by those who would sell false hopes in exchange for your money and your power. Pessimism, when it does not become paralyzing nihilism, is simply honesty about the nature of existence. Genuine mental health is not the absence of negative thoughts. It is the ability to experience and process the full range of human emotions without becoming permanently trapped in any of them. It is the capacity to recognize when things are objectively terrible without collapsing into despair, and to appreciate moments of beauty and connection without the anxiety that they must be preserved forever. It is resilience that comes from facing real difficulties and discovering that you can survive, not false confidence that comes from repeating affirmations about your own invincibility. The optimism industry sells an impoverished version of psychological well-being that confuses emotional suppression with mental health. The legacy of toxic optimism will be a generation that has been trained to smile through collapse, to be grateful for crumbs while others celebrate, to blame themselves for systemic failures. We are already seeing the cracks. Depression and anxiety rates continue to rise despite, or perhaps partly because of, the ubiquity of positive thinking discourse. People are exhausted from maintaining a constant happiness performance. Cynicism is growing as a natural response to repeated broken promises that optimism will solve all problems. The question is not whether this system will eventually collapse under the weight of its own contradictions, but what will take its place. And so the mirror turns once more, reflecting not comfortable truths but realities you have been avoiding because they told you that recognizing them is being negative. You have spent years chasing a version of happiness that was designed to be unreachable, buying products and services that promised to deliver it to you, blaming yourself when they inevitably failed. You have suppressed legitimate emotions because you were told they were toxic. You have feigned gratitude that you did not feel because the alternative was to admit that things were not okay. You have kept that smile until your face hurt. And somewhere in the process, you lost the ability to distinguish between how you really feel and how you are supposed to feel. The real question is not whether extreme optimism has blinded you. It is whether you are willing to take off the blindfold and look directly at the reality you have been avoiding. Schopenhauer would be observing with that half-somber smile, not surprised that 500 years after he wrote about the nature of human suffering, people still desperately seek philosophies that tell them it doesn't really exist. The truth remains truth regardless of how many positive affirmations you repeat. And perhaps, just perhaps, there is more freedom in acknowledging that truth than in spending your life fleeing from it toward increasingly empty promises of guaranteed happiness.